All right. Please join me in welcoming to the stage executive producer Mark Johnson, executive producer, showrunner, and writer Esta Spalding, executive producer and writer Michelle Ashford, Alexandra Daddario, Dr. Rowan Fielding, Harry Hamlin, who plays the patriarch Cortland Mayfair, Jack Huston, who plays the mysterious Lasher, and Tongayi Chirisa, who plays Ciprien Grieve. Welcome, all of you. Mark, I want to start with you because everyone just saw the trailer. Cool house, creepy guy on a boat, confused neurosurgeon. But the show is so much more than that. So why don't you set the stage, since we haven't seen a whole episode, for what the show is about?
Well, I probably shouldn't be the one talking about what the show is about. I'm very privileged in that we're working on a number of Anne Rice projects at the same time, but what's wonderful, each one of these books is completely different and yet somehow tied together. And this is, for me, it's so much about empowerment, and it's about understanding your worth and understanding the forces that are against you and discovering who you are, all from a female perspective, which of course I can't contribute to. So both the writers, creators right here can probably answer that a lot better than I.
Well, I mean, yeah, Esta, go for it. Also, and I'm curious to know, because I'm, obviously the best-selling book series, but I'm curious also what were the themes of the books that you were the most looking forward to exploring?
I mean, I think it's a show about power. It's a show about coming into your power and asking yourself the question, when I discover that I have this power, what will I do with it? The power that our fantastic and amazing character, Rowan, is discovering is that she has not just a power to heal as a doctor, but also a power to destroy, and that can be intoxicating, and so she wants to control it, and the show is really about, will she control it or not?
Michelle, why are we so obsessed with witches?
Yes, exactly. Yay, witches. They are fascinating, and for so many reasons. And when Esta and I first got this material, we saw the lead character was a doctor, we thought, wow, that's curious in such a supernatural kind of world. But it turns out to be very, very deliberate, because witches, going back hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years ago, were healers. That's how they started, and they were enormously powerful. And that was threatening to the patriarchy. And so they became demonized as witches. And so we got very excited about this whole notion, especially given in this kind of inflection point that we're living in, where certain power structures seem to be sort of crumbling, and new ones are probably coming up to take their place. And will women have a very central role in how? Yes, we will. And how these new systems will be structured. So, witches are just fun, sexy, powerful, and great in every way. But this is also really tied to some very real things that we got very excited about writing about.
Alex, leading witch, tell us what drew you to the character of Rowan.
The idea of the character being a neurosurgeon and also being quite lost and quite a bit of a mess at the same time as being very together and independent and all of that. And then also discovering that she has this family she doesn't have and that she's a witch. All of that for an actress it's incredibly complex and I think quite relatable. And as a woman coming up in this business too, I think you don't discover that you're a witch, obviously, but as you grow up, you can be all those different things. So it felt very multi-layered, very complex, and then also really fun because we got to do crazy things and throw in some magic.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting with what Michelle just said also. It's, you know, I think of her when she's a neurosurgeon, there are all of these, even in her non-witch life, these patriarchal structures in place that she has to fight against that are sort of, you know, keeping her down a little bit. And then she has to then duplicate that in a whole other world.
That's right. I think that even when you first meet Rowan, and you guys will see when you see the episodes, despite being this incredibly talented neurosurgeon and an incredibly well-spoken, intelligent person, she's still dealing with, yeah, I guess you can call it the patriarchy, you can call it, but she's dealing with just being a young woman, and what does that mean? And then you get to really just go off running and her finding her power and figuring out how to use it, and is she good and is she bad, and how does she justify her own behavior, and what does she do with all of this power that she has, including just in the regular world of being a neurosurgeon, and then also when she discovers who she really is.
Yeah, and what's it like to be underestimated? Absolutely. Harry, let's talk about Cortland Mayfair. He is not a shrinking violet. We see him with a snake in episode 1, which you all will see when he's introduced. What did you love about this character? Was it just a blast to like go all in with someone like him?
Well, Cortland is an enigma. He is the patriarch, and we do have an issue between us, being a patriarch, the patriarch of the family. And I was drawn to the character because I was never quite sure whether he was good or evil. And there's a lot in this show about good and evil, of course, because it's about witches and all that. And I didn't find out really how potentially evil he was until I read episode 7, which was quite a ways into shooting when I found out, oh my God, who is this person that I'm playing? You know? And thank you for that, by the way. No, it's fantastic. And I also get to be the life of the party. I mean, I'm a Southern gentleman who likes his wine and his women. You know, sometimes the wrong women, but I won't get into that. You'll have to see that on the show. Anyway.
Jack Lasher, iconic character. He's described as a shape-shifting spirit. What did the producers tell you about this Lasher in this series, and what questions did you have about him?
I had a lot of questions, but luckily I was in amazing hands. Because Lasher is, you know, in the books, he's described as this sort of dark entity, shape-shifting spirit that's conjured and inherited by the witches in progression. But you know, it's interesting because when you have a character that's described one way in a book, it's how do you take that and put that on the screen? And I thought that was the most interesting part of our conversations was how do we get creative? How do we stay true to Anne Rice? But at the same time, how do we show this to a modern audience to make Lasher exciting, make him, when I say real, it's like how do you sort of stay on top of something which is described as a spirit. But luckily, we've got such an amazing team and crew of people that are putting this show together. And we had such phenomenal creators, and our wonderful first director, Mike Uppendahl, just really wanted to explore and go deep into these characters and sort of say, what can we do? What can we do fun, exciting? Let's shock the audience. Let's make it scary. Let's make it dark, but let's make it sexy. Let's stay true to Rice. And, you know, not a bad person to stay true to.
No, absolutely. Tongayi, Ciprien is a combination of a couple of characters that people might recognize in the books. Tell me about him, tell me about who he is, and was it a relief that you got to play a couple of characters glued together?
First off, this is awesome. Wow. You only get to see this stuff on YouTube, you know what I mean? But it's so great to be here. But yes, Cyprien Grieve, he's a combination of Aaron and Michael. He works for the Telemaster, and boom, she knows. She knows.
Yeah, she sure does.
And so, the job of the Telemaster is obviously to observe supernatural activities, whether it's through a person or a group of people. And, if necessary, we intervene. And so, he's obviously tasked with looking out for Rowan, and then they go through this journey of trying to discover who Rowan is, what's going on in her life, what the connection is to the family, to Lasher, and how does that affect Cyprien.
Yeah. All right, so who here had read the books before getting cast? Did you all have a book club? Was there like a little New Orleans book club that or did Esta and Michelle, did you not want them intentionally to read the original source material?
Wait a minute. They all told us before we cast them they'd read all the books and we're dying to do this.
All of them, twice.
No, we were excited. I mean, Alex was notorious for always having her book with her and being on set with the book.
Over
and
1,000 pages.
Yeah.
You got to get through it.
And it was like so inspiring, and just to have, because the book is so full of, I mean, there was no way in 8 episodes to have all of the riches that are in that book. And there's 13 generations of the lives of these women described in the middle section of the book for, I think it's 400 pages, something like that. So you just couldn't put it all there, but to have it and have everyone reading it was like bringing the vibe of the book and the city that's brought so to life in the book with us to set every day. It was great that everyone was reading it.
One of the things that I love about the books and the themes of this series also is just how you might not come from a family of witches, but your family's dysfunctional. You know what I mean? And I love, and everyone has to look into their own, whatever it is, lineage or relatives, and you kind of figure out where you're from and how you came to be. And I loved that theme. Was that something that you guys were into exploring?
Oh yeah, we were very excited about the fact that at its heart, it was really a great family story. And I think, like you say, everyone can relate to that. Everyone knows what it feels like. Most people know. Probably everybody on this stage knows what it feels like to come from kind of a crazy family. And so that was very exciting. And yes, the witches part was just this added fantastic magical layer on top of it. But we loved that.
I mean, you get to think of the craziest family members that you have and then give them powers. So it's great fun.
Fun and scary, right? Yeah.
Right, scary too, yes.
Alexandra, Rowan in many ways is an outsider and an insider. And it's interesting to me that you were with the book all the time because I was curious how much you wanted to know about witchcraft, about just the world that this is set in, because she doesn't know anything about this. She has no idea where she came from.
Oh, that's a good point. I mean, to be honest, Wicca, as I understand it, there were a couple practicing witches on set. It was very different than what this was. But I always, whenever I do anything that's based on a book, I think it's so important to read the book. I think you can get so much about the character and the relationships between the character and the other characters and story, and you find so many different layers from reading the book, even if it's not on the page, and you can always bring that in when you least expect it. So fine. At the end of the day, it's about a girl who is discovering who she is and is lost, and I can relate to that, and I'm sure all of us can. And so knowing about witchcraft or having read the book didn't mess up my acting stuff.
I'm going to go back to something you just said, that there were a couple of witches on the set.
Yes.
Tell all.
Wicca
Elaborate.
is a beautiful religion. I don't know much of. I learned a little bit about it, but from what I understood, it's rooted in goodness and love, and yes, there are spells and there's different rituals and that kind of thing. But I didn't learn too much about it, so I don't want to speak too much on it. But it felt different than what Anne Rice had done.
Jack, Lasher has been around for a while, and I think about the long list of villains and creepy characters in literature and television and film, and I was wondering, when you were coming up with this character, was there anything that you look to, like music or artwork or someone's performance that helped you figure out who he was?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because with Lasher, it's described as a dark sort of spirit entity. I found a lot of love in the character, like what his relationship was with these individual women, witches, who own him, and he's there to sort of help bring out their power, bring out their strength, and maybe not always in the lightest of ways, but it's interesting because we're trying to figure out sort of new ways of playing with the idea of owning something and, something belonging to you and empowerment and stuff. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, Lasher's been around 400 years. It's 500 almost. So I think it's interesting when you're looking at someone who's changing through the times, through the periods with each person, is how much of that person do you take on, and how much of that personality do you take on, especially if you're owned by them. So I think a lot of it was also reacting or working with the amazing Alex and Annabeth, and these are Cameron, who were all the three witches that you see in this, who at some point owned me. So I wanted to sort of mimic some form of them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
You look pretty good for 500.
Good cream.
Harry, I was wondering the same thing about you, or even what it was like when you were dressed in his full wardrobe going to a party or whatever, and when you looked in the mirror, were you like, okay, I get this character now?
Actually, I was very fortunate early on in my life to work with Laurence Olivier, and he had, in a book that he wrote, talked about his green umbrella. And whenever he couldn't get a character, something would be given to him by a property master, he would walk into a set or whatever, and somehow he would be infused with that character. And for me, it was a pinky ring. It was given to me on day one by the property master, and as soon as I put that pinky ring on, I knew who Cortland Mayfair was. That sounds weird, I guess, but it worked for Olivier, and it worked for me too.
And the mansion, Harry. The mansion probably helped.
Tongayi, you have so much your character has so much to keep track of. There's so many generations and details and things to know. Did you have like a cheat sheet in your trailer so that you could remind your character of, okay, this is where we are, this is what I need to know?
Oh, no, I'm naturally smart like that. Yeah. No, no, Cip is actually a very intelligent individual. He speaks over 30 languages, just a scholar. So, come on now. That's what I'm
That's
talking
right.
about. And so just his character, this is his world. keeping tabs of what's going on. And so it was his mandate to know the history of the Mayfair family. And so coming into this story with Rowan, it's kind of like the final piece to the puzzle that he already knew. And because of his abilities, he was able to kind of like really piece certain things together and kind of like be ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mark, we got to see a little nod to Mayfair in Interview with the Vampire, if eagle-eyed people were watching. What can you tell us? Like, how much are all of these Anne Rice worlds going to bleed into each other, as it were?
It's a good question. I don't think we've quite answered it yet, because her series of books are so distinct. They're all connected. You know that they're part of the Anne Rice umbrella, but they're so different. And I think for me, the biggest achievement of her writing is that everybody is completely relatable. Everybody is a human being. A vampire is not a human being. A witch is not a human being. So everything that they're concerned about and the issues are our issues. Loneliness, love, where do I fit in? What is the thing that I need to do to survive? And so if we can keep all of those throughout, I think there will be a way that we can interconnect the stories, and not just in terms of Easter eggs, but I think that we will see some characters maybe who weren't even written in a particular book may appear from another book, and somehow just keep the Anne Rice world alive, and yet keep each book as distinctive as she wrote it.
I would like to become a vampire.
Not a bad idea,
Like to see
Harry.
that.
Just putting that out there, maybe immortality. Okay?
Mark, what do you say? Is he hired?
No, I have some applications. I'll talk to you later.
All right, I want to hear about New Orleans. You guys filmed earlier this year. Obviously, New Orleans is such a special place to Anne Rice and to the worlds that she created. Tell me what it was like filming there, all of you. Other than hot. I know it was real hot.
We started
Only one word.
Interview with the Interview with the Vampire at the beginning of the year. Everybody who was in, it's the same thing with Mayfair Witches. Everybody was on the cast and crew from New Orleans had a connection to Anne Rice, whether or not they'd ever read any Anne Rice. She meant a great deal to them. And we just had a cast and crew screening in New Orleans of Interview on Sunday, and it was unlike anyone I've ever done before, because everybody felt a connection and felt a reason to honor her, and it wasn't just another show. It was something that they felt really, really deeply. And then, so we had a wonderful time on Interview, and we had a wonderful time on Witches until what, August?
July.
Yeah.
Alexandra, do you want to answer that one?
Look, it is hot. But I will, back to the crew, the crews are amazing. I've shot in New Orleans a few times, and I have friends from New Orleans, and New Orleans is a wonderful place, and the people are really bonded over, it's a really interesting place politically, and with the weather, as we all know, more than just hot, the hurricanes. So you have a lot of people who really take care of each other, and look, good food. It was work too much to drink, but there's good drink.
I want to say also that one of the big characters in this show is the house. And one of the very, very first things we had to do in, embarking on shooting in New Orleans was find the house that was going to be that First Street house. And there is a house on First Street that Anne Rice wrote the book in, and that she really modeled as the Mayfair home. We were not able to shoot there, but we were so warmly welcomed by the family to come in and location scout there. And it turned out that our location manager had grown up in the house, knew it well. In fact, when he was a little boy, he described that there was a ghost in the house who would tuck him into bed every night and pet his hair, or he'd tuck himself in, the ghost would pet his hair. So you really got a feel for this house, and then went out and scouted a house that we could make like that house. And it became kind of the anchor in that garden district for our shooting. We were there all season long, and it was extraordinary neighborhood to be filming, and super, super welcoming. I mean, they just kept saying, come on back, which almost never happens when you're filming in neighborhoods. It was great.
I heard it's just a very warm, like Esta said, just very welcoming, warm place to shoot. Did you guys, as actors, experience that?
Oh, sorry.
That was the ghost from.
I was
that your
going to say it
answer?
is warm. I was eager to say that for some reason. But yes, go ahead, Harry.
Absolutely, it was very, very warm.
Hot, even, yes. Other than Esta and Michelle, I wanted to ask you about the look of the show, because it is so stunningly beautiful. The color palette, the house, but also there's so many places. How was it scouting, and what was your vision overall for the look of it?
We can take absolutely no credit for that, except, that we had this extraordinary team, and we, just amazing director of photography, Evans Brown, who set the look of the show and the color palette for the show, shot and lit everything so beautifully. Kind of discovered, you'll notice when you're seeing it, that the aspect ratio is a little bit different from the aspect ratios of most shows, and this is because Evans felt that the architecture of New Orleans would be better featured, and in particular our house would be better featured in this other aspect ratio, so that's very distinctive. And then our production designer was a New Orleans local and who really drew on her childhood there. I mean, she found these locations and built set after set after set, just built this extraordinary world for us with wallpapers like you can't imagine. Amazing team. And the costumes by Janie Bryant, who you worked with Harry on Mad Men, who's just
Janie
amazing.
she's a magician with
Yeah.
clothing.
And the look of our cast, our head of makeup is here, Amy is here, and Jennifer Jane, who did hair. Everyone just brought it. And all, again, local crew who are just so talented and amazing.
There was another department that you haven't mentioned, which is how to make a 70-year-old actor look like 40 department. And I talked to this guy. I said, because when I show up in the episode 1, I'm 40 years old. And I said, how are you going to do that? And he said, well, it's all artificial intelligence. We go back and we grab your movies from when you were 40. We throw them into the algorithm. We mix it all together into a soup. And when you're going to come out looking like do I look younger in that first episode? Yes. I do? So that's magic, right? So that, witchcraft right there.
Other than any kind of de-aging magic, did anything strange happen on set? We've already heard about ghosts. Did anything else make you go, that feels a little weird?
Anybody get tucked in bed, hair patted by a ghost? That's right, a lot of lightning. There was a lot of lightning, a lot of wind. We blamed Lasher for all of it.
Yeah.
Yes.
There were times when there was one scene we were doing when the thunderclaps came in just at the right time. It was amazing. It was like almost as though it was orchestrated. I wonder if you're going to keep that in.
That was when you were looking at the diary with Dolly Jean. I remember that. It was,
For all of us, it was perfect timing. I don't know.
Yeah, we were shooting on these giant stages as well, and you could hear the thunder. And there was one day we were shooting a scene, and it was like, I forget who I was shooting with, but I think it was between every line was when the thunder would hit. So it, somehow saved our dialogue, which is magical to me. So it was we got little creepy cool things like that.
What was the most challenging scene to film, without spoiling anything? Or was there a specific, I don't know, event in the series that really just took everything?
Everything as in energy?
Sure.
Okay, so I don't know if any of y'all have been to New Orleans. Like, it is hot. Hot. And we had this one scene, we're in the swamps. I mean, like, the heat is choking you, right? And I got heat stroke. Yeah, terrible. But I didn't realize I had heat stroke. So Alex is looking at me, I'm sweating buckets, and I'm just like, man, it's hot out here today, isn't it? She's like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm just really, really hot. Had a couple of lines. I don't think I said my lines. So just dealing with the heat for me was just like, that was a really, really tough day. And for her, I don't know, she was like easy breezy. Harry was like in a suit, didn't get affected.
I do a lot of hot yoga.
Right, okay, that makes sense.
So I was like doing yoga, but I get to talk.
You also have the gloves. I blame the gloves for some of the stroke.
Not the heat. That's the heat.
He is well insulated.
What's that?
He's well insulated.
Yes, he was. Suits and all.
Yes, absolutely, all of it. We have about 15 minutes left, so if people want to line up, if you have questions, and as you're doing that, I'll just keep going. How, Esta and Michelle, when you had to think, oh my God, how do I do this in 8 episodes? How did you approach that?
Well, we had as Alex mentioned, this is 3 books. The first book is over 1,000 pages. So we spent a lot of time just saying, what's the essence of what's going through this first book? And we had to just make some really hard choices. It just took a lot of time to talk through it and just kind of distill it down to what we felt like was kind of the main narrative drive through that material.
Yeah, it felt like that first book has such a clear beginning for Rowan's story and such a decisive and interesting ending that we needed to start there and end there in the first book. And it was, how do we, work through what's there and use what's there with this, as I say, kind of embarrassment of riches that were in the book.
Absolutely. All right. Ooh, sorry. Ghost again. Let's go over here.
I've met Anne Rice a few times. And I've asked, she's been asked so many times, like, when are you going to come out with Interview with the Vampire on TV? When are you going to come out with this, The Wolf Gift on TV, Mayfair Witches on TV? What was the if factor for you guys that made this really happen?
It's a question for you, Mark.
What made this really happen? No, it's for you.
No, because it's all of the Anne Rice.
Sorry, I didn't know, not specifically Mayfair Witches. I think people have been trying for some time to find a way to bring these to television, and it's not easy. It's not easy at all, and we're so lucky to have Esta and Michelle and Roland Jones on Interview, because like anything else, you want to, the great books you don't want to tamper with, but at the same time, you do need to make them work in a completely different medium. And I think it was just the confluence of a lot of events, and I have to tell you, AMC was so smart, I think, to go after these books, and so really... The AMC office showed up. So smart to go after these books, but most importantly, really supported us every single way. And in terms of, can we do this? Can we do this? Is this a little bit on the edge of being inappropriate or violent, or can we go this far with a character? And AMC has supported us every step of the way, and it's. you know, I don't know how many of you have seen Interview yet, but when you see Mayfair Witches, you're going to see something just as astonishing and that I believe really respects the work, but this is really Esta and Michelle's version of Anne Rice's Mayfair Witches.
Thank you. Thank you.
Go on this side.
Hi. Oh my gosh, I'm on the thing. Hi. So in lieu of asking for Alex's hand in marriage, I'm going to ask. Hi.
I was wondering, hi.
Love
Thank you also.
Love you. So obviously with this show, you guys probably had to do a lot of like CGI kinds of things. How does that present as an actor as like a struggle, or is it something that like helps you trying to get into mind of picturing the CGI, or how does working with CGI work for you basically?
I am very lucky that I started, because they don't teach you how to work with CGI in acting class. So when I was very young, I was 22 when I booked a CGI movie, Percy Jackson, and it had so much, and it had so much CGI that I got a crash course in it. So I have over the years done more and more of that, so I'm able to handle it without getting out of my head. But it's a good question because it can be very distracting to act against a green screen, someone who's not there. There's a lot of looking just at the lens. You don't get to look at the person you're acting with, which can throw you off. But it's just practice like anything. Yeah, and then you just sort of try to make it as genuine to yourself as possible. You know, maybe a lot of practicing in the mirror when I was a kid too.
If I'm not mistaken, Percy Jackson was based on Perseus from a movie called Clash of the Titans. Ray Harryhausen didn't have CGI, he had stop motion. But we still had to work with nothing in the air. I have some experience in that area. Anyway, that was a nice, yeah, thank you for that. Anyway.
Full circle. Yeah. It's all connected. But yeah.
Esta and Michelle, I'm curious, of all of the kind of CGI stuff or effects or things, what was the one that was the toughest to nail?
Well, this is really a question for Jack, because Jack is the toughest VFX in the pilot, and I think in the whole season. We can't really spoil it, but he had to sort of create a template for a CGI moment.
Yeah, it's I think I came to it with a lot of questions, and the greatest thing was working with people who I'd throw out an idea and everyone was like, let's try it. So that's kind of fun, because it wasn't necessarily working with green screens or tennis balls and stuff. There was a real moment of, okay, well, this is a show about power, about magic, about witches. And Lasher being who he is, what can we do in camera? What can we do without having to sort of break the fourth wall and actually really put it into the CGI world? But like, what can we do to sort of really explore these characters and what they can do as a sort of a unique ability? And the greatest, it really was amazing, like how open everybody was to the ideas, because the best thing about doing a show like this is when you're around people who you really love and respect, and everybody understands that it's a team and it's the collaboration that really brings it and elevates it. And there was never an idea that was shot down. There was never, ever a moment where someone didn't say, oh, okay, great, let's talk about that. It's such a rare thing on a show or on a movie where you are able to sort of be part of the creation of your character, which I think is really important, especially on something like this. So, you know, it was very important to see like the effects for these characters, but it was trying to sort of keep them human in a weird way.
And in the case of, you know, your character too, it was like you helped figure out a grammar visually with the camera, within scenes, you know, so that we didn't have to CGI and that we, as you say, could do stuff on the day in camera that really worked. But it was a grammar generated a lot by conversation with you about how the character would move and so on.
Figuring out a character together is the best, and you're doing cool things. Like, we're like, let's go back to the old school way of making movies, when, you know, someone's walking backwards and they're blowing out the candles, and that's how it looks like they're walking forward and the candles are being lit. It's like, what cool things can you do without having to go too heavy? And obviously there are some amazing set pieces that we go very deep into that stuff, but it's just as fun trying to do things in the reality of the situation, so you're not having to pull yourself out too much.
All right, let's go to this side again.
Hey, so I'm Madison, 2 N's and 1 Y, but it's not what you think. So, to everybody up here on stage, it's a big fandom of mine to know, like, where you thought that you were most quintessentially finding Anne Rice's thematic life and bringing it to stage, because, like, I'm just saying, she's amazing, and if you do not know it, you should read. Y'all should read it all, but she's amazing. So where do you find that you all got tapped into her greater genius? To know your genius was
I think
part
right
of
now.
her genius.
I think this is the moment.
This
Look at
guy right here, he knows it.
Lydia.
He knows it. He knows it. Thank you.
Will there be a She-Hulk crossover?
Awesome. Awesome.
Anne Rice was a genius. She was, and I don't know that I could ever tap into her level of genius.
Well, I mean, I'm curious.
I like the encouragement.
Was there a particular description of Rowan in the book that you loved?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't have a great answer for that. I mean, I loved, like I said, this, because a lot of, there's descriptions of her, there's this, it's also, the way she interacts with other people is incredible. And I think, I read a lot of Anne Rice interviews, because I like your question, because I wanted to understand where Anne Rice was coming up with all these themes and all these ideas, and this woman, and how she relates to men, and her strength, and her, is she evil, is she good, all of this. And Anne was had an interesting relationship with religion. She lost a child very young. If you read her interviews, she has fascinating things to say about writing, about her process, about living, about her relationship with all kinds of different, everything you think about in the world. And she took vampires and witches and these really interesting stories, and she used them as a metaphor for what it is to be human. So I think learning about Anne really helped form the character.
Let's go to this side now.
Hi, my name is Jamie from Queens. I am a huge Mayfair Witches fan and Anne Rice fan, and I love the adaptation and the updates for Interview with the Vampire, and including race and actually including sexuality, which she doesn't really do in the books. As somebody who was reading Mayfair Witches as a teenager when I probably shouldn't have been, yeah, I'm not alone. Lasher was kind of a sexual awakening, maybe, for a few young women. I'm just wondering how has there been any updates or dealing with, now in a post-Me Too world, some of Lasher's behaviors would, not fly on television, and also dealing with race, combining a character and then making him a black man. How did that affect the story also?
God, do I have to go first now? Jeez. Yeah, I think we're very aware of who Lasher was in the books and some of the so-called descriptions. You do have to be careful. But, God, that's really, I think we've done it justice, but we haven't pushed the
Sexy.
boat in. Yeah, we've tried to make it
are-
erotic and sort of beautiful and interesting, and actually the relationship on a much more fundamentally deeper level. So how maybe it was a little more, I don't want to say pornographic, but it was pretty out there. Some of the stuff was pretty out there. Anne Rice had a vivid imagination. Yeah, vivid.
But
And in a very, like I'm saying, there was a lot of beauty in the relationship and what we've sort of discovered, and the dark and the light. So I think you can't, within something like this, you have to explore both sides of that. Without being exploitative.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really tricky question because we want the book to feel of the now, the show to feel of the now. We want to be telling faithful to Anne's story. And really, again, as Michelle said at the beginning, what was so compelling to us is that Rowan in the pilot says, you know, if I had power, things would be different for women. She says this to this young woman. So that's her kind of wish for the world and wish for what she would do with power. And then she starts to get power, and the question is that what she's going to do? How is she going to do it? And the vessel for her experiencing some of her power is this character Lasher. And so it felt really important to sort of have Rowan consenting in some way to being empowered by Lasher, but also being frightened by Lasher and so on. So I know in the writer's room, we just talked a lot about all of that. We tried to unpack, what does it mean to be empowered? What does it mean to consent to take on a power that's destructive? How do we make Lasher both scary, but not, you know, somebody who's doing some of the stuff we just simply didn't want to watch or have done to the character? So I guess I'll say, you know, you guys can see how you feel about when you watch it, but we really thought deeply about these things and asked all of these questions. And the show is our answer, at least in the first season, to one part of the question. We hope there's lots more answers to come, we hope.
And Tongayi, you want to take the second half of that question?
Oh, right. So obviously I listened to the book, and you find that there's certain themes within Witch and Hour that are not compatible with today's world, right? And I feel like combining these characters, and also see it's in New Orleans, you know, there's the likelihood, and I think, you know, if you read the books that, you know, there was a gentleman in the books that was married to a Mayfair woman, so you find that, I think, over the course of the years, the Mayfairs does have a very diverse look, you know, and I think just paying ode to modern day television and all the conversations that are happening, it just feels natural that you will get, you know, an individual such as Cyprien in the Talamasca, you know, based off of the world that Anne Rice wrote.
And that the story that Anne told is of a family that came through Haiti, so we really felt to bring the diversity of that experience of the world of New Orleans into the family and make this family diverse was, you know, again, much more of the now, and did honor all of the ways in which Anne writes about, you know, multitudes of humanity, of all kinds of people.
Thank you.
All right. Last question. Those are great questions. Thank you. Are you already thinking of season 2?
What was the last question?
Are you already plotting out season 2? Because we need a lot.
Please say yes.
All right.
You'll tell us.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, come January, I'm sure you all will tell Mark and everyone else. I want to thank all of you so much for coming and this
Thank you, guys.
extraordinary.
And
Thank you so much.
I just did want to say that we have a premiere date. We have a premiere date now. It's January 5th, exclusively on AMC Plus streaming.
January 5th, on AMC, Anne Rice's Mayfair Witches. I want to thank Mark Johnson, Esta Spalding, Michelle Ashford, Alexandra Daddario, Harry Hamlin, Jack Huston, and Tongayi Chirisa, and all of you so much for joining us.
Thank you, guys.